in the frozen forests of North America, where winter devours the land and silence hangs heavier than death itself. An ancient presence is said to stalk the trees, a creature born from starvation, madness, and the darkest corners of human hunger. Tonight, on Tales of the Dark, we explore one of the oldest and most terrifying legends ever whispered by the Algonquian tribes, the Wendigo. The Wendigo legend is more than just a story. It is a warning, a spiritual consequence. Among the Algonquian people, the Wendigo is described as a spirit of winter, a force of insatiable hunger, and a punisher of greed. They believed that when a human being becomes too hungry, too desperate, or too consumed by selfishness, their soul can split. And in that split, something horrific enters, a Wendigo. It begins as a whisper, a voice that says, "Eat," or "be eaten." One of the earliest stories comes from the mid-1800s. A trapper named Elijah Harper vanished during a brutal winter storm near the Canadian border. Weeks later, searchers found his camp. His tent was still intact. His supplies were completely untouched, but the snow all around the camp was covered in long, claw-like footprints, far larger than any human should leave. Some prints ended abruptly, as if the creature had simply stepped into thin air. Locals whispered, Harper didn't vanish, he transformed. The tribes believed the transformation followed distinct stages. First, an uncontrollable, ravenous hunger. Then, insomnia and constant trembling. The victim would start hearing voices calling their name, an irresistible urge to wander deep into the woods at night. Their bones would begin to crack and shift as the body grows impossibly thinner and taller. The final stage, the heart becomes completely coated in ice. A Wendigo is never full. No matter how much flesh it consumes, no matter how many victims it drags into the forest, it will always starve. In fact, every kill only makes it bigger, taller, more monstrous, and even more impossible to satisfy. Some elders claim Wendigos can grow several feet overnight after feeding. Others say the creature has no real, single form, that it can mimic human voices to lure victims into blizzards, swamps, and dark trails where nobody ever returns. In 1901, a logging camp in Ontario was found completely abandoned. Tools were scattered everywhere. The food was untouched. The fires had long burned out. To this day, no bodies were ever found. Only a chilling message carved into one of the logs. He calls from the trees. But perhaps the most chilling Wendigo case happened in 1879, involving a Cree man named Swift Runner. During an incredibly harsh winter, he and his entire family became trapped in the wilderness. When rescuers finally reached his camp in the spring, they found bones, cracked open for the marrow, and flesh stripped clean. Swift Runner was still alive. He claimed a Wendigo spirit had possessed him, forcing him to consume his own family. Witnesses reported that even while in custody, he said he could still hear the creature whispering to him. For generations, hunters have reported hearing voices in the woods, sometimes calling their name, sometimes repeating their thoughts out loud. But the most disturbing detail, a few claim they heard their own voice calling back to them from between the trees. In recent years, hikers describe seeing a tall, skeletal figure with glowing yellow eyes, its ribs pushing through its skin, and the smell of rot mixed with the crisp winter air. And often, search teams find no tracks at all, only those long claw marks on the trees. It's said that before a Wendigo appears, everything becomes silent. No wind, no birds, not even the crunch of snow beneath your feet. The entire world just holds its breath. Locals call this strange phenomenon the silence of bone winter. And now, as we close this part of our tale, we leave you with the same silence that so many claimed to hear, just moments before the Wendigo arrived. Have you ever been deep in the woods, maybe camping or hiking, and suddenly, everything goes quiet? No birds, no rustling leaves, just silence. Most people find it peaceful, but for those who know the old stories, that silence is where the horror truly begins. Today, we rejourneying into the frozen heart of North American folklore to uncover the terrifying truth behind one of its most enduring and feared creatures, the Wendigo. Our first story takes us back to 1923, to a remote, snow-covered valley in the Canadian wilderness. A search party was looking for a lost trapper, but what they found was something else entirely. Strange tracks pressed deep into the frozen earth. The footprints were enormous, elongated, almost skeletal, and spaced so far apart that no human could have possibly made them. The party followed the trail, their initial curiosity slowly turning to unease. But then, the truly baffling part happened. Halfway across a frozen lake, the tracks just stopped. They didn't fade away. They weren't covered by snow. They simply ended, as if the creature that made them had lifted itself straight into the air and vanished into the grey winter sky. The local elders weren't surprised. They'd always said that Wendigos don't run through the forest. They glide, silently, just above the snow. While the creature itself is a terrifying legend, modern science has documented a frightening psychological condition known as Wendigo psychosis. It's a culture-bound syndrome, primarily affecting people in the northern forests. The symptoms are chillingly specific. Victims report an intense, overwhelming craving for raw meat. They begin seeing shadowy figures in the corners of their vision. They hear whispers just behind them, no matter how quiet the room. At night, they feel an unshakable sense of being watched, and they suffer from recurring nightmares of a tall, emaciated creature standing over their bed as they sleep. Doctors and psychiatrists have tried to explain these symptoms through malnutrition and psychological stress, but the tribal elders insist the truth is far darker. They have a saying: when you start to feel the Wendigo, it already knows your name. Let's fast forward to 1954, in the dense woods of northern Minnesota. A small group of winter surveyors, tasked with mapping the remote landscape, suddenly went silent. Radio contact ceased. Days later, a rescue team discovered their camp, but what they found painted a scene of pure chaos and terror. The tents were ripped open, not from the outside, but from the inside, as if the men were desperately trying to escape something that was already with them. Strange, non-human footprints circled the entire camp. Deep scratch marks were gouged into the thick ice of a nearby lake. And most horrifying of all, a trail of blood led away from the camp and deep into the silent forest. The trail didn't go on forever. It stopped abruptly at the base of a giant, ancient cedar tree, and there, carved into the bark at eye level, were 3 words: he was hungry. The surveyors were never seen again. No bodies were ever found. So, what does this creature even look like? Eyewitness accounts, gathered over centuries, are terrifyingly consistent. They describe a being of impossible height, standing anywhere between 8 and 15 feet tall. Its skin is a sickly grey or deathly pale, stretched so tightly over its bones that every angle of its skeleton is visible. Its eyes are sunken deep into its skull, often said to glow with a faint, malevolent light. Its arms are unnaturally long, with thin, clawed fingers that reach almost to its knees. Many who claim to have encountered it report a distinct, metallic smell, like old blood and cold winter air. But the most disturbing feature is its mouth, a lipless slit that can tear open far wider than human anatomy should allow. revealing rows of sharp, yellowed teeth. Some of the darkest legends even claim that Wendigos were the faces of their previous victims, stretched like grotesque masks over their own skeletal skulls. This brings us to the story of Thomas Blackmoon, a Cree hunter from 1938. Thomas was a seasoned woodsman, a man who knew the forest better than his own home. One winter afternoon, while tracking a large moose, he felt that signature chill. The world went silent. He said it moved without a sound, a grey shadow slipping between the trees. Then it spoke to him, but it didn't use its own voice. It used the voice of his brother, who had died years before. "Come with me, Thomas," the voice whispered through the trees. "I'm so cold." Pure terror took hold. Thomas dropped his rifle and ran. He ran 4 miles without looking back, without stopping, until he collapsed on the doorstep of the nearest settlement. When they found him, he was trembling so violently he couldn't speak for days. He lived for a few more years, a shadow of his former self, haunted by what he saw. His final words on his deathbed were whispered to his family. "It followed me home." You might think these are just old stories, relics of a bygone era, but the sightings continue, even today. From 1990 to 2023, there have been over 200 official reports from hikers, campers, and park rangers in remote areas across Canada and the northern United States. The details are always eerily similar. Large, humanoid figures watching them from the tree lines, just beyond the firelight. Horrible, guttural screaming that echoes through the valleys at night. Trees with bark ripped clean off, 20 feet up the trunk. And those strange, human-like tracks with elongated toes, appearing out of nowhere and disappearing just as suddenly. In the age of technology, some campers have even captured audio evidence. Recordings of voices mimicking their friends, calling their names from the dark, even when their companions were miles away. One particularly famous recording from the Appalachian Trail captured a clear, raspy whisper right next to the microphone, saying, "Let me in, I'm starving." So why does this legend persist? Why, after centuries, does the Wendigo still hold such a powerful grip on our imagination? Because the Wendigo is more than just a monster. It's a symbol. It represents the deepest human fears. Isolation, starvation, desperation. It's the embodiment of what happens when a person is pushed to the absolute brink, when survival demands the unthinkable. The legend speaks to the dark corners of human nature, a creature born not in the twisted roots of the forest, but in the desperate chambers of the human heart. Some believe Wendigos are ancient, primordial spirits of winter and famine. Others believe they are humans cursed to an eternity of hunger after resorting to cannibalism. But every version of the story agrees on one thing. Once the hunger truly begins, there is no going back. This is our final warning. If you ever find yourself in a winter wilderness, and the world around you goes completely unnaturally silent, you should turn back. Do not try to find the source of the quiet. Do not look too deeply into the trees, searching for the source of that feeling that you're being watched. If you hear your name called on the wind, do not answer it. And above all, never, ever walk toward the voice that sounds like someone you know, someone you love, calling for help from the darkness. Because out there, in the frozen dark, something is always hungry, always watching, and always waiting. Thanks for joining me on this chilling journey into the legend of the Wendigo. If you enjoy exploring the dark and mysterious corners of our world, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Stay safe out there, and whatever you do, don't listen to the whispers in the woods.